What if the key to peace doesn't lie in holding on, but in letting go? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." These words, spoken centuries ago, still resonate deeply today, especially in a world where we're constantly pulled in countless directions. Detachment, as the Stoics taught, isn't about indifference or apathy. It's about freeing yourself from the chaos of things you can't control, so you can focus on what truly matters. In this video, we'll explore how Stoic detachment can transform the way you approach life's challenges. We'll dive into principles like cognitive control, which helps you master your thoughts, resilience in the face of adversity, and the power of living fully in the present moment. By the end, you'll see how letting go isn't a loss, it's a path to lasting peace and clarity. Stoicism teaches us that not everything is within our power. This simple yet profound idea lies at the heart of the Stoic philosophy and is known as the Dichotomy of Control. At its core, it's about recognizing the difference between what we can influence and what we cannot. The Stoics believed that peace of mind comes not from trying to control external events, but from focusing on how we respond to them. As Epictetus once said, "Some things are within our power while others are not." Within our power are our thoughts, actions, and choices. Outside our power are the actions of others, the outcomes of events, and even the circumstances life throws our way. Think about this in the context of modern life. Imagine you're at work facing a tight deadline and suddenly your computer crashes. You can't control the malfunction, but you can control how you react, whether you panic or calmly troubleshoot the issue. The same principle applies to more significant challenges, like dealing with criticism or navigating unexpected changes. By redirecting our energy toward what we can influence, our mindset, our efforts, and our attitude, we reduce frustration and create space for clarity and resilience. So let's pause for a moment and reflect. What areas of your life are you trying to control that are beyond your power? Are you obsessing over someone else's opinion, or perhaps worrying about outcomes you can't predict? Recognizing these patterns is the first step toward practicing Stoic detachment. It's not about giving up or being passive. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of trying to manage the uncontrollable. This shift in focus is where true empowerment begins. Detachment isn't about suppressing emotions but observing them. This is where the Stoic practice of cognitive detachment comes into play, a powerful tool that allows us to step back and witness our thoughts and feelings without being consumed by them. The idea isn't to ignore or shut down what we experience, but to create a mental space where we can see these emotions for what they truly are, temporary, passing events in the mind. The Stoics believed that our thoughts and emotions are not inherently good or bad. It's how we respond to them that shapes our inner peace. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." This insight reminds us that much of our distress comes from how we interpret and react to our thoughts, not the thoughts themselves. By observing them without judgment, we can prevent them from spiraling out of control. Think of it like watching clouds pass by in the sky. You don't try to stop them or change their shape. You simply notice them as they move. Similarly, when we practice cognitive detachment, we learn to see our emotions and thoughts as fleeting phenomena, not something that defines us or dictates our actions. Let's take a practical example: handling criticism or rejection. These moments can feel deeply personal, triggering anger, sadness, or self-doubt. But what if, instead of immediately reacting, you paused and observed those feelings? What if you asked yourself, is this emotion serving me, or is it clouding my judgment? By creating that pause, you gain the power to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. So here's a question to reflect on. How often do you let your thoughts dictate your peace? When was the last time you caught yourself caught up in a spiral of worry or frustration, only to realize later that the situation wasn't as dire as it seemed in the moment? The beauty of cognitive detachment lies in its ability to give us back control, not over the external world, but over how we engage with our inner world. This practice isn't about becoming emotionless or detached from life. It's about cultivating a sense of calm and clarity, even in the midst of chaos. And as you start to observe your thoughts and emotions with this kind of mindful awareness, you'll find that the storms within you begin to lose their power, leaving you with a deeper sense of resilience and peace. Why do we let others' opinions shape our self-worth? This question lies at the heart of a Stoic approach to detachment. The Stoics believed that external validation, whether it's praise, criticism, or approval, has no real power over us unless we allow it to. Think about it. When you base your worth on what others think, you're giving them control over your emotions and actions. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." This simple yet profound statement challenges us to shift our focus inward, to find validation within ourselves rather than seeking it from the outside world. In today's world, this idea feels more relevant than ever. Take social media, for example. How often do we post something and anxiously wait for likes, comments, or shares? Each notification becomes a tiny hit of validation, but it's fleeting. The moment it fades, we're left craving more. Stoicism reminds us that this cycle is a trap. True peace comes from detaching ourselves from the need for external approval and instead cultivating a sense of self-sufficiency. It's not about ignoring others entirely, but about not letting their opinions dictate how we feel about ourselves. So how do we start this journey? Begin by asking yourself, whose approval are you seeking and why? Is it a boss, a friend, or even strangers online? Reflect on what drives that need. Is it fear of rejection, a desire to fit in, or something deeper? The Stoics would argue that none of these external voices hold the key to your happiness. That power lies within you. By focusing on your own values, actions, and growth, you can build a foundation of self-worth that doesn't crumble under the weight of others' opinions. It's not easy, but it's liberating, and isn't that the ultimate goal? To live freely, unshackled by the need for approval. Acceptance is the first step toward freedom. It's not about giving up or resigning yourself to defeat, but about recognizing what lies beyond your control and choosing to stop fighting against it. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed that suffering often comes not from the events themselves, but from our resistance to them. When we refuse to accept reality as it is, we create unnecessary tension and pain. But when we embrace acceptance, we free ourselves from that struggle and open the door to peace. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, put it this way: "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." In other words, focus on what you can influence, your thoughts, your actions, your responses, and let go of trying to control the uncontrollable. This isn't a call to passivity, it's a call to clarity. By accepting what you cannot change, you conserve your energy for the things that truly matter. Think about a situation many of us face at some point: losing a job. It's a jarring experience, one that can leave you feeling powerless and uncertain about the future. But here's the Stoic perspective: you can't change the fact that the job is gone. What you can change is how you respond to it. Do you spend your time dwelling on what went wrong, or do you accept the reality and focus on finding new opportunities? The first path leads to frustration, the second leads to growth. Acceptance doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It means acknowledging the truth so you can move forward with purpose. So, what are you resisting that you need to accept? Is it a relationship that didn't work out, a dream that didn't come true, or perhaps even a part of yourself you've been unwilling to embrace. Take a moment to reflect on that. Acceptance isn't always easy, but it's always freeing. And when you let go of the fight against what you can't control, you'll find that life becomes lighter, clearer, and more open to possibility. True wealth lies not in what we own, but in what we can let go of. This idea, central to Stoic philosophy, invites us to rethink our relationship with material possessions. The Stoics believed that attaching too much value to things we can lose, whether it's money, belongings, or status, only sets us up for disappointment and anxiety. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, put it this way: "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." In other words, wealth isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by your ability to live contentedly with less. Think about it. When we tie our happiness to objects, we become dependent on them. The more we own, the more we fear losing. This creates a cycle of craving and clinging that can never truly satisfy us. The Stoics encourage us to practice non-attachment, not out of disdain for material goods, but to free ourselves from their hold. It's about recognizing that possessions are temporary, they come and go, and focusing instead on what's within our control, our mindset, our values, and how we choose to live. Consider the act of decluttering. When you let go of items you no longer need, you're not just clearing physical space, you're creating mental and emotional freedom. Each item you release is a small act of defiance against the idea that you need more to be happy. It's a reminder that you already have enough, and in a world driven by consumerism, where we're constantly told to buy, upgrade, and accumulate, this shift in perspective can be incredibly liberating. So take a moment to reflect. What possessions are you holding onto that no longer serve you? Maybe it's that old gadget gathering dust, or clothes you haven't worn in years. Or perhaps it's something deeper, like the belief that owning more will make you happier. By letting go, you're not losing anything. You're gaining clarity, peace, and a sense of true abundance. Resilience isn't about avoiding pain, but enduring it with grace. It's the quiet strength that allows us to face life's inevitable setbacks without being consumed by them. For the Stoics, resilience wasn't just a trait to admire. It was a practice, a way of engaging with the world that transforms adversity into opportunity. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This profound insight reminds us that challenges aren't roadblocks, they're the very path to growth. Think about it. When you face rejection, failure, or disappointment, it's easy to feel stuck or defeated. But what if, instead of resisting the pain, you leaned into it? What if you saw every setback as a chance to build resilience and deepen your understanding of yourself? The Stoics believed that discomfort and difficulty are not only inevitable but necessary. They shape us, refine us, and teach us how to let go of what we cannot control. Take, for example, a situation where you didn't get the job you wanted or a relationship ended unexpectedly. It's natural to feel hurt or discouraged, but resilience invites you to shift your perspective. Instead of clinging to what went wrong, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I grow stronger through this experience? By reframing setbacks as opportunities, you detach from the emotional weight of failure and open yourself to new possibilities. So, how can you reframe your own setbacks as opportunities? Start by acknowledging the pain without letting it define you. Recognize that while you can't control what happens to you, you can control how you respond. Resilience is built in those small, deliberate choices, choosing to move forward, to learn, and to let go of what no longer serves you. It's not about ignoring the struggle, but embracing it as part of your journey. In the end, resilience and detachment go hand in hand. They remind us that life's challenges are not meant to break us, but to shape us into stronger, wiser versions of ourselves. And as you cultivate this mindset, you'll find that letting go becomes not an act of loss but an act of liberation, a step toward greater peace and freedom. The past is gone, the future is uncertain, all we have is now. This simple truth lies at the heart of Stoic philosophy, reminding us that clinging to what has already happened only weighs us down. When we fixate on past mistakes, missed opportunities, or old grudges, we hand over our present peace to something we can no longer control. The Stoics believed that regret is not only useless but also harmful. It keeps us stuck in a cycle of what-ifs and if-onlys, robbing us of the clarity and energy needed to live fully in the present. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, put it bluntly: we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. When we replay past events in our minds, we amplify their impact, turning them into larger, more painful burdens than they need to be. The truth is, the past cannot be changed, no matter how much we dwell on it. What we can change is how we choose to respond to it in the here and now. By letting go of what's already behind us, we free ourselves to focus on what truly matters, the actions we take today. Think about it this way: holding onto the past is like carrying a heavy backpack everywhere you go. You might not notice it at first, but over time the weight slows you down, making every step harder than it needs to be. Maybe it's a past failure that still makes you doubt yourself, or a grudge you've been nursing for years. Whatever it is, ask yourself, what past event are you still clinging to? And more importantly, what would it feel like to set that weight down and move forward unburdened? The Stoics didn't ignore the past, they simply refused to let it dictate their present. They understood that every moment is an opportunity to start anew, to act with wisdom and virtue regardless of what came before. By practicing this mindset, we can transform our relationship with the past from one of regret to one of learning. Instead of seeing past mistakes as failures, we can view them as lessons that guide us toward better choices today. So, take a moment to reflect. What's one thing from your past that you're ready to release? The act of letting go isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing to live fully in the only moment that truly exists now. Fear is often a product of our imagination, not reality. It's easy to get caught in a loop of worrying about things that may never happen, losing a job, being judged by others, or failing at something important. But the Stoics remind us that fear, more often than not, is rooted in how we perceive a situation, not the situation itself. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic thinkers, put it this way: it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. In other words, fear is less about the external event and more about the story we tell ourselves about it. So how do we confront this? The Stoics teach us to use reason as a tool to dismantle irrational fears. When fear arises, they encourage us to pause and ask, is this fear based on facts or assumptions? Is it something within my control, or is it outside of it? By breaking fear down into these questions, we can begin to see it for what it truly is: a mental projection, not an unavoidable truth. This doesn't mean ignoring fear, but rather examining it with clarity and logic. Take the fear of failure, for example. Many of us avoid taking risks because we're afraid of falling short. But what if we reframed failure as a necessary part of growth? The Stoics would argue that failure isn't something to fear, it's a teacher. Every setback is an opportunity to learn, adapt, and become more resilient. Similarly, the fear of public speaking, a common anxiety, often stems from overestimating the judgment of others. In reality, most people are far more focused on themselves than on scrutinizing you. By shifting our perspective, we can start to loosen fear's grip on us. Now, think about your own life. What fears are holding you back from living fully? Are they rooted in reality, or are they creations of your mind? The next time fear creeps in, try this Stoic exercise. Write down what you're afraid of, then ask yourself if it's within your control. If it is, take action. If it's not, remind yourself that worrying won't change the outcome. This simple practice can help you detach from fear and reclaim your peace of mind. What if you lost everything you hold dear? It's a jarring question, one that might feel uncomfortable to even consider. But this is exactly the heart of the Stoic practice known as negative visualization. The idea is simple yet profound. By intentionally imagining the loss of what we value, whether it's our health, relationships, or possessions, we train ourselves to appreciate them more deeply while also preparing for life's inevitable uncertainties. It's not about dwelling on pessimism, it's about cultivating gratitude and resilience. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, put it this way: "We should love all our dear ones, but always with the thought that we have no promise that we may keep them forever." This isn't meant to make us anxious or fearful. Instead, it's a reminder to cherish what we have while we have it, without clinging so tightly that the fear of losing it consumes us. By practicing this mindset, we learn to hold things lightly, appreciating them without becoming dependent on them for our happiness. Let's make this practical. Think about the people you love most, your family, your closest friends. Now, imagine what life would be like without them. It's not an easy exercise, but it forces us to confront how much they truly mean to us. When was the last time you told them how much you value their presence in your life? Or consider your health. What if you suddenly lost the ability to do the things you take for granted, like walking, seeing, or even just waking up without pain? By reflecting on these possibilities, we begin to see how much we have to be grateful for, even in the ordinary moments. So here's a question to ponder: what would you miss most if it were gone? Take a moment to sit with that. The answer might surprise you, and it might just shift how you approach your daily life. This practice isn't about preparing for the worst. It's about living more fully in the present, with a deeper sense of appreciation for the gifts we often overlook. Negative visualization, when done with intention, becomes a powerful tool for detachment, not from caring, but from the fear of losing what we care about. We can't control outcomes, only our actions. This simple yet profound truth lies at the heart of Stoic philosophy and offers us a path to inner peace. The Stoics teach us that while we can pour our energy and intention into what we do, the final result is often beyond our grasp. And when we tie our happiness or self-worth to those outcomes, we set ourselves up for disappointment. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." In other words, the only thing we truly own is our effort, our focus, our discipline, and our attitude. The rest is not ours to control. Think about a job interview. You can prepare thoroughly, research the company, practice your answers, and present yourself confidently. But whether you get the job or not depends on factors outside your influence. Maybe the hiring manager had a personal preference, or the company decided to go in a different direction. If you're overly attached to the outcome, you might feel crushed by rejection, even though you did everything right. But if you focus on the effort you put in, the growth you experienced, the skills you honed, you can walk away with a sense of pride, regardless of the result. The same applies to creative projects. An artist might pour their heart into a painting, but whether it sells or garners praise isn't entirely up to them. What's within their control is the act of creation, the time, care, and passion they invest in their work. By shifting their focus from the outcome to the process, they can find joy in the act itself, rather than relying on external validation. So ask yourself this: are you more attached to the effort or the outcome? It's a question worth reflecting on, because the answer can reveal where you're placing your sense of worth. When we detach from results, we free ourselves from the anxiety of needing everything to go a certain way. Instead, we can embrace the journey, knowing that our effort is what defines us, not the outcome. This mindset doesn't mean we stop caring about results. It means we care more about what we can control, and that's where true empowerment lies. Letting go isn't losing, it's gaining freedom. This might sound counterintuitive at first, especially in a world that often tells us to hold on tighter, to fight for what we want, to never give up. But the truth is, when we release our grip on what doesn't serve us, whether it's a toxic relationship, a harmful habit, or even an outdated belief, we create space for something far more valuable: liberation. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus once said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." In other words, true freedom comes from detaching ourselves from the external and focusing on what we can control: our own thoughts, actions, and reactions. Think about it this way: when you're holding onto something too tightly, your hands are full. There's no room to grasp anything new, no opportunity to grow. But when you let go, you open yourself up to possibilities you might not have even considered. It's like clearing out a cluttered room. You're not losing the items, you're gaining space, clarity, and the ability to breathe. This is the essence of Stoic detachment. It's not about indifference or apathy. It's about choosing where to direct your energy so you can live with purpose and peace. Consider a toxic relationship, for example. Holding onto it might feel like loyalty or commitment, but in reality, it's a chain that restricts your growth. Letting go, though painful, can be the first step toward rediscovering your self-worth and opening yourself to healthier connections. The same applies to habits that no longer serve you. Maybe it's procrastination, self-doubt, or even a need for constant validation. When you release these, you're not giving up, you're reclaiming your time, your confidence, and your freedom. So, what would freedom feel like to you? Imagine waking up without the weight of resentment, regret, or fear. Picture yourself moving through life with a sense of lightness, unburdened by the things you can't control. That's the power of letting go. It's not about losing something, it's about gaining the freedom to live fully, authentically, and intentionally. And that's a gift worth pursuing. The ego thrives on attachment. Detachment quiets it. At its core, the ego is that voice in your head that insists on being right, being seen, or being validated. It's the part of us that clings to external approval, status, or possessions as if they define who we are. But here's the thing: the Stoics understood that this attachment to ego is a source of endless suffering. It distorts our perception, fuels conflict, and keeps us chained to desires that are ultimately fleeting and meaningless. Seneca, one of Stoicism's great thinkers, once wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." This isn't just about anger, it's about all the ways our ego reacts impulsively, demanding instant gratification or immediate validation. When we pause, when we detach, we create space to see things as they are, not as our ego wishes them to be. Humility and self-awareness become our tools, helping us step back from the need to win, to dominate, or to be seen as superior. Think about the last time you found yourself in an argument. Was it really about the issue at hand, or was it your ego defending its territory? The Stoics would argue that most conflicts are less about the facts and more about the need to prove ourselves right. Detachment allows us to rise above this. It's not about giving up or being passive. It's about choosing where to invest our energy. When we let go of the ego's demands, we gain clarity and peace. Consider competition, whether in work, sports, or even personal relationships. The ego thrives on comparison. It wants to be the best, the fastest, the most admired. But Stoicism teaches us to focus not on outshining others, but on improving ourselves. Detachment helps us shift from a mindset of scarcity, where we feel we must win to prove our worth, to one of abundance, where we recognize that true value comes from within. So, how does your ego influence your decisions? Does it push you to seek approval, to avoid failure, or to prove yourself to others? take a moment to reflect on this. Detaching from the ego isn't about erasing your identity. It's about freeing yourself from the need to constantly defend or elevate it. When you quiet the ego, you make room for wisdom, for connection, and for a deeper sense of fulfillment. Gratitude shifts our focus from what we lack to what we have. It's a simple yet profound truth that can transform how we experience life. When we practice gratitude, we're not ignoring the challenges or difficulties we face. Instead, we're choosing to see the abundance that already exists around us. This shift in perspective is at the heart of detachment because it allows us to release the grip of longing and embrace the present moment with clarity and peace. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's most revered thinkers, once wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." These words remind us that even in the midst of life's struggles, there is always something to appreciate. Gratitude doesn't erase hardship, but it helps us rise above it by anchoring us in the here and now. It teaches us to value what we already possess rather than endlessly chasing what we don't. Think about this. When you feel gratitude for the people in your life, the experiences you've had, or even the small comforts of daily living, you're actively letting go of the sense of scarcity that often fuels discontent. Gratitude fosters contentment because it redirects our energy away from what's missing and toward what's already present. It's a practice that strengthens our ability to detach from the desire for more and instead find fulfillment in the enough. So, how can you bring more gratitude into your life? Start small. Take a moment each day to reflect on 3 things you're grateful for. Maybe it's the warmth of the sun on your face, a kind word from a friend, or even the fact that you have a roof over your head. Over time, this practice can rewire your mind to naturally notice and appreciate the good around you. And as you grow in gratitude, you'll find it easier to let go of the things that no longer serve you, whether it's material possessions, toxic relationships, or self-defeating thoughts. Now, here's a question for you to ponder. What are you grateful for today? Take a moment to really think about it, because when you focus on gratitude, you're not just cultivating a positive mindset. You're building a foundation for true detachment, one that allows you to live with greater freedom and joy. Perfection is an illusion, progress is real. The Stoics understood this deeply, recognizing that the relentless pursuit of perfection often leads to frustration, anxiety, and disappointment. Instead of striving for flawlessness, they embraced the idea of progress, small, consistent steps toward becoming better versions of themselves. This mindset shift isn't about settling for mediocrity. It's about freeing yourself from the paralyzing weight of unrealistic expectations. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "If you wish to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid in extraneous matters." What he's pointing to here is the importance of letting go of the need to be perfect in every aspect of life. When we fixate on perfection, we waste energy on things that don't truly matter, like how others perceive us or whether we meet an unattainable standard. Instead, Stoicism encourages us to focus on what's within our control, our effort, our attitude, and our willingness to grow. Think about how this applies to your own life. Maybe you've spent hours agonizing over a project at work, tweaking every detail because you're afraid it won't be good enough. Or perhaps you've avoided starting something new altogether, worried that you'll fail before you even begin. The Stoic approach would be to ask yourself, is this pursuit of perfection serving me, or is it holding me back? Progress, not perfection, is where real growth happens. It's in the messy, imperfect attempts that we learn, adapt, and ultimately improve. So, where are you chasing perfection unnecessarily? Is it in your relationships, your career, or even your hobbies? Take a moment to reflect on how letting go of that need to be flawless could open up space for meaningful progress. Remember, the Stoics didn't aim to be perfect. They aimed to be resilient, adaptable, and at peace with their imperfections. And that's a goal worth striving for. Remembering death reminds us to live fully. It might sound counterintuitive, but the Stoic practice of Memento Mori, Latin for remember you must die, it isn't about dwelling on fear or sadness. Instead, it's a powerful tool to help us detach from trivial concerns and focus on what truly matters. When we confront the reality of our mortality, it strips away the illusions of permanence, reminding us that our time is limited and precious. This clarity can free us from the distractions of ego, material desires, and petty grievances, helping us align our actions with what we genuinely value. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, put it this way: "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." His words cut to the heart of Memento Mori. Life isn't short because of its length. It's short because we often fail to use it wisely. By reflecting on the inevitability of death, we're reminded to stop postponing what matters, to stop chasing things that don't serve us, and to start living with intention. It's not about living in fear of the end, but about living in reverence for the time we have. Think about it. How often do we get caught up in things that, in the grand scheme of life, don't really matter? Arguments over small slights, endless scrolling on social media, or chasing after possessions that won't bring lasting fulfillment. Memento Mori helps us step back and ask, is this how I want to spend my time? Is this how I want to be remembered? When we frame our days through the lens of mortality, the trivial falls away and what's truly important rises to the surface. So, how can we put this into practice? Start by taking a moment each day to reflect on your mortality. It doesn't have to be morbid or overwhelming, just a quiet acknowledgement that your time is finite. Use that awareness to guide your decisions. If today were your last day, would you spend it arguing over something trivial, or would you choose to connect with the people you love? Would you chase after something fleeting, or would you focus on what brings you peace and meaning? These questions aren't meant to paralyze you, they're meant to empower you to live with greater purpose. What would you do differently if today were your last day? It's a question worth sitting with, not to provoke anxiety, but to inspire action. The practice of Memento Mori isn't about fear, it's about freedom. It's about letting go of what doesn't serve you and embracing what does, so you can live a life that feels rich, meaningful, and true to who you are. Anger is a temporary madness, detachment is the cure. The Stoics saw anger as one of the most destructive emotions, a force that clouds judgment and pulls us away from reason. To them, anger wasn't just an emotional reaction, it was a surrender of control, a moment where we let external events dictate our inner peace. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it." This simple yet profound statement reminds us that the fallout from anger, broken relationships, regret, or even physical harm often outweighs whatever provoked it in the first place. But how do we begin to detach from anger? The Stoics teach us to pause and reflect before reacting. Imagine you're stuck in traffic and someone cuts you off. Your first instinct might be frustration, even rage. But what if, instead of letting that anger take over, you asked yourself, does this person's actions truly harm me, or am I giving them power over my emotions? By stepping back and reassessing the situation, you reclaim your reason and refuse to let anger control you. This isn't about suppressing emotions, it's about understanding them. Anger often arises from unmet expectations or a sense of injustice. The Stoics would argue that while we can't control what others do, we can control how we respond. When someone wrongs us, instead of lashing out, we can choose to see their actions as a reflection of their own struggles, not ours. This shift in perspective doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it helps us detach from the emotional weight of it. So, what triggers your anger and how can you release it? Is it a co-worker's criticism, a friend's betrayal, or even something as trivial as a misplaced comment? The next time you feel that fiery surge, take a moment to breathe and ask yourself, is this worth my peace? By practicing this small act of detachment, you'll find that anger loses its grip and reason takes its place. The present moment is all we truly have. It's the only space where life unfolds, where decisions are made, and where peace can be found. Yet, so often we're caught up in the past, replaying regrets or longing for what was, or fixated on the future, chasing desires or fearing uncertainties. This constant drift away from the present creates attachment, tying us to things we can't control. But here's the Stoic insight: presence is the antidote to attachment. When we anchor ourselves in the now, we free ourselves from the weight of what's already gone or what may never come. Epictetus once said, "We are not disturbed by what happens, but by our thoughts about what happens." This is the core of it. Our attachment isn't to the events themselves, but to the stories we tell ourselves about them. When we focus on the present, we strip away those layers of narrative and see reality as it is: simple, unadorned, and manageable. Presence allows us to respond to life with clarity rather than react with fear or desire. Think about mindfulness or meditation. These practices aren't just about relaxation, they're tools for cultivating presence. When you sit quietly, focusing on your breath or the sensations in your body, you're training your mind to stay rooted in the now. Over time, this practice spills into your daily life. You start noticing the texture of your morning coffee, the sound of birds outside, or the way sunlight filters through a window. These small moments of presence become anchors, pulling you back from the chaos of overthinking and into the calm of what's real. Now, here's a question to ponder. How often are you fully present in your daily life? When you're having a conversation, are you truly listening, or is your mind racing ahead to what you'll say next? When you're eating, do you taste your food, or are you distracted by thoughts of work or worries about tomorrow? Presence isn't just a philosophical idea, it's a practical skill. And like any skill, it takes practice, but the reward is profound: a life lived more fully, with less attachment to what doesn't truly matter. By embracing the present, we align ourselves with Stoic wisdom. We learn to let go of what's beyond our control and focus on what's within our power right here, right now. Comparison is the thief of joy and the enemy of peace. This timeless truth resonates deeply with Stoic philosophy, which teaches us to reject the habit of measuring ourselves against others. Why? Because comparison doesn't just steal our happiness, it distracts us from what truly matters: our own growth, values, and inner peace. When we constantly look outward, judging our lives by someone else's achievements, possessions, or appearance, we create a cycle of dissatisfaction that pulls us further from contentment. The Stoics understood this centuries ago, and their wisdom is perhaps more relevant today than ever before. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, once wrote, "The greatest wealth is a poverty of desires." What does this mean? It's a reminder that true fulfillment comes not from stacking up our accomplishments against others, but from freeing ourselves from the endless craving for more. When we compare, we're not just seeking to match others, we're often chasing an illusion, a version of success or happiness that may not even align with who we are or what we truly value. And in doing so, we lose sight of our own path. Think about how this plays out in our modern world, especially with social media. Scrolling through curated feeds, it's easy to feel like everyone else is living a more exciting, successful, or fulfilling life. But here's the reality: what we see online is rarely the full picture. People share their highlights, not their struggles. And when we compare our behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel, we set ourselves up for disappointment. The Stoics would urge us to step back and ask, why are we giving so much power to these comparisons? What are we truly seeking when we measure ourselves against others? This brings us to a simple but powerful question: who are you comparing yourself to, and why? Take a moment to reflect on this. Is it a friend, a colleague, or even a stranger online? What do you hope to gain by stacking your life against theirs? And more importantly, what could you gain by turning that attention inward, focusing on your own progress and values? Detaching from comparison doesn't mean ignoring others or rejecting ambition. It means reclaiming your peace and directing your energy toward what truly matters to you. That's the Stoic path to freedom. What if everything that happens is for your good? At first glance, it might sound like wishful thinking, but this is the essence of Amor Fati, a Latin phrase that translates to love of fate. It's a Stoic practice that encourages us not just to accept what happens, but to embrace it wholeheartedly, seeing every event, whether joyful or challenging, as an opportunity for growth. This mindset is not about passive resignation. It's about actively finding value in every moment, no matter how it unfolds. Detachment plays a central role here. When we resist what life throws at us, we create unnecessary suffering. We cling to how we think things should be rather than accepting how they are. But when we practice Amor Fati, we let go of that resistance. We stop fighting against the current of life and instead learn to flow with it. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." In other words, even the toughest challenges can fuel our growth if we allow them to. Think about the unexpected twists in your own life. Maybe it was a job loss, a breakup, or a sudden change of plans. At the time, it might have felt like a setback, but looking back, did it lead to something you couldn't have imagined? Perhaps it opened a door to a new opportunity or taught you a lesson that shaped who you are today. This is the power of Amor Fati. It shifts our perspective from seeing life as something happening to us to something happening for us. So, how can you start embracing your current circumstances, even the ones that feel difficult? Begin by asking yourself, what can I learn from this? How can this situation help me grow? By focusing on these questions, you transform resistance into curiosity and curiosity into acceptance. It's not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about recognizing that even the imperfections have value. When you love your fate, you free yourself from the weight of what you can't control and open yourself to the possibilities of what you can. Regret keeps us chained to the past. Detachment sets us free. It's a heavy weight we carry, isn't it? That lingering thought of what could have been, the missed opportunities, the words left unsaid, the paths not taken. But here's the thing, regret, while painful, is a natural part of being human. The Stoics, however, offer us a way to rise above it, to learn from it without letting it consume us. Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." In other words, regret often magnifies our past mistakes far beyond their true impact. It's not the event itself that hurts us most, it's the story we keep telling ourselves about it. So how do Stoics approach regret? They see it as a teacher, not a tormentor. Every misstep, every missed chance is an opportunity to grow. Instead of dwelling on what we can't change, they encourage us to focus on what we can do now. It's not about pretending the past didn't happen or that it doesn't matter. It's about accepting it fully, learning from it, and then letting it go. Imagine holding onto a burning coal. The longer you grip it, the more it hurts. Regret works the same way. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing not to let the pain define you. Think about a time you missed an opportunity, maybe a job you didn't apply for, a relationship you didn't pursue, or a goal you abandoned. What did that experience teach you? Perhaps it showed you what truly matters to you, or it revealed a strength you didn't know you had. The Stoics would say that even in those moments of regret, there's value. It's not about erasing the past, but about transforming it into wisdom. Here's a question to reflect on. What regrets are you holding onto? Are they teaching you something, or are they holding you back? The key is to acknowledge them, understand their lessons, and then release them, because the present moment is where life happens, and regret can't exist there unless we invite it in. Detachment isn't about indifference, it's about freedom. Freedom to live fully, right here, right now. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, as the saying goes. And when it comes to mastering the art of detachment, simplicity plays a profound role. Think about it. The more we complicate our lives with endless desires, attachments, and distractions, the harder it becomes to find peace. But when we strip away the unnecessary, we create space for clarity and focus. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." This idea isn't just about material things, it's about freeing ourselves from the mental clutter that weighs us down. Consider the minimalist lifestyle. By owning only what we truly need and value, we reduce the emotional burden of managing and maintaining excess. This isn't about depriving ourselves, it's about prioritizing what truly matters. When we simplify our surroundings, our schedules, and even our relationships, we're better able to see what's essential and let go of what isn't. It's like clearing out a crowded room. Suddenly, there's room to breathe, to think, and to act with purpose. So, what can you simplify in your life today? Maybe it's decluttering your workspace, saying no to commitments that drain your energy, or even reevaluating the habits and routines that no longer serve you. Every small step toward simplicity brings you closer to a state of detachment, where you're no longer ruled by external pressures or distractions. The beauty of simplicity is that it's not just a practice, it's a mindset, one that helps us live more intentionally and with greater freedom. And isn't that what Stoicism is all about? Expectations are premeditated resentments. This powerful idea, rooted in Stoic philosophy, reminds us how often we set ourselves up for disappointment by clinging to specific outcomes. The truth is, life rarely unfolds exactly as we imagine, and unmet expectations can lead to frustration, anger, or even despair. The Stoics, however, offer a different approach, one that frees us from the cycle of disappointment by teaching us to detach from rigid expectations and embrace reality as it is. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoic thinkers, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This simple yet profound statement underscores the Stoic belief that our suffering often stems from trying to control what's beyond our power. Instead of fixating on how things should be, Stoicism encourages us to focus on how we respond to what is. This shift in perspective can be life-changing, especially in areas like relationships or career goals. For example, think about a time when you expected a promotion at work. You might have worked tirelessly, imagining how your life would improve once you achieved it. But what happens if it doesn't come? The disappointment can feel crushing. Stoicism teaches us to reframe this experience. Instead of tying your happiness to the outcome, focus on the effort you put in and the growth you achieved along the way. The promotion may be out of your control, but your dedication and resilience are not. In relationships, the same principle applies. We often expect others to behave in certain ways or fulfill specific roles in our lives. But when they don't meet those expectations, it can lead to resentment. Stoicism reminds us that we can't control others. We can only control how we interpret and respond to their actions. By letting go of rigid expectations, we create space for understanding, patience, and genuine connection. So, what expectations are you holding onto? Take a moment to reflect on the areas of your life where you've attached your happiness to a particular outcome. Are you willing to release them and embrace the uncertainty of life? By practicing detachment, you not only reduce your own suffering, but also open yourself up to the unexpected joys and opportunities that come when you stop trying to control the uncontrollable. Discomfort is a teacher, not an enemy. This simple yet profound idea lies at the heart of the Stoic practice of voluntary discomfort. By willingly stepping into situations that challenge us, whether it's skipping a meal, taking a cold shower, or enduring a difficult conversation, we train ourselves to detach from the comforts and conveniences that often dictate our choices. These small acts of resistance build resilience, teaching us that we are more capable than we think and that our well-being doesn't hinge on external conditions. Seneca, one of Stoicism's great thinkers, once wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." This isn't just a poetic sentiment, it's a practical truth. When we voluntarily face discomfort, we're not punishing ourselves, we're preparing. We're reminding ourselves that life will inevitably throw challenges our way, and by practicing endurance now, we're equipping ourselves to handle whatever comes next with grace and composure. Take fasting, for example. Skipping a meal might seem trivial, but it's a powerful exercise in self-control. It forces us to confront our cravings and question whether we're truly hungry or simply acting out of habit. Similarly, cold showers are a daily reminder that discomfort is temporary and that we can endure far more than we often give ourselves credit for. These practices aren't about suffering for the sake of suffering, they're about building a mindset that isn't easily shaken by life's ups and downs. So, what discomfort can you embrace today? It doesn't have to be extreme or dramatic. It could be as simple as turning off your phone for an hour, walking instead of driving, or having that difficult conversation you've been avoiding. The goal isn't to make life harder, but to make yourself stronger. By choosing discomfort voluntarily, you reclaim your power and cultivate a sense of detachment that allows you to face life's challenges with calm and clarity. Overthinking is the enemy of peace. It's that endless loop of what-ifs and should-haves that drains our energy and clouds our judgment. But for the Stoics, the mind isn't a battlefield, it's a garden. And just like a garden, it requires careful tending. The Stoics believed that reason is the tool we use to prune away the weeds of overthinking and cultivate clarity. It's not about suppressing thoughts, but about understanding which ones deserve our attention and which ones are simply noise. Epictetus once said, "You become what you give your attention to." Think about that for a moment. When you overthink, you're giving your attention to things that may never happen or things you can't change. The Stoic approach is to redirect that focus toward what's within your control. For example, instead of endlessly worrying about a decision, break it down into smaller, actionable steps. Ask yourself, what's the next right thing I can do? This shifts your mind from chaos to purpose, from anxiety to action. Let's make this practical. Imagine you're facing a tough choice at work. Maybe a project isn't going as planned. The overthinking mind might spiral into fears of failure or judgment, but the Stoic response is to pause, breathe, and ask, what's the worst that could happen? And if it does, how will I handle it? This isn't about ignoring the problem, it's about facing it with calm and rationality. By focusing on what you can control, your effort, your preparation, your response, you take back the reins of your mind. So, here's a question to reflect on. What thoughts are you overanalyzing right now? Are they serving you, or are they just holding you back? The Stoics remind us that peace isn't found in the absence of challenges, but in the way we choose to meet them. When you quiet the mind, you create space for clarity, courage, and ultimately, freedom. Compassion dissolves the barriers we create. It's not just about feeling sympathy for others. It's about understanding their struggles, their humanity, and recognizing that we're all part of the same shared experience. When we approach life with compassion, we naturally let go of judgment because judgment often stems from fear, misunderstanding, or the need to feel superior. Compassion invites us to see the world through another's eyes, and in doing so, it helps us release the tight grip we have on our own assumptions and biases. Marcus Aurelius once said, "What injures the hive injures the bee." This simple yet profound idea reminds us that we're all interconnected. To harm others, even through harsh judgment, is to harm ourselves. Empathy, a cornerstone of compassion, allows us to step back from the urge to criticize or resent. It doesn't mean we excuse harmful behavior, but it does mean we approach others and ourselves with a sense of understanding rather than condemnation. This shift in perspective is where true detachment begins. Think about a time when someone wronged you. Maybe it was a friend who let you down or a stranger who acted rudely. It's easy to hold onto resentment, to replay the moment in your mind and let it fester. But what if instead you chose to see that person as someone who might be struggling just like you? What if you forgave them, not because they deserved it, but because carrying that resentment only weighs you down? Compassion helps us forgive, not for their sake, but for our own. It frees us from the emotional chains of anger and frustration. So here's a question to reflect on. Who can you show more compassion to today? It could be someone you've been holding a grudge against, or even yourself. Often we're our own harshest critics, quick to judge our mistakes and shortcomings. But what if you treated yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a friend? Compassion isn't just about others, it's about creating a space within yourself where judgment has no place. And when you do that, you'll find that letting go becomes not just easier, but liberating. Being right is overrated, understanding is priceless. This might sound counterintuitive in a world that often rewards winning arguments and proving a point. But for the Stoics, the pursuit of being right is a trap, one that fuels ego, creates unnecessary conflict, and distracts us from what truly matters: growth and connection. Instead of focusing on who's right or wrong, Stoicism invites us to shift our attention to understanding. It's about asking, what can I learn from this? How can I see this differently, rather than, how can I prove I'm correct? Seneca, one of Stoicism's most profound voices, once said, "When you argue with someone, the goal isn't to defeat them but to lift them up." This idea is rooted in humility, a cornerstone of Stoic philosophy. Humility reminds us that our perspective is just one of many, and it's not always the most complete or accurate. By letting go of the need to be right, we open ourselves to deeper insights and more meaningful conversations. It's not about surrendering your beliefs, it's about valuing the exchange of ideas over the satisfaction of winning. Think about the last time you found yourself in a heated debate. Maybe it was about politics, a personal disagreement, or even something as simple as how to load the dishwasher. How much of that energy was spent defending your position rather than truly listening to the other person? The Stoic approach would challenge you to pause and ask yourself, is being right more important than preserving this relationship or gaining a new perspective? Often the answer is no. By detaching from the need to win, you create space for mutual respect and growth. This mindset doesn't just apply to big arguments, it's equally relevant in everyday interactions. Imagine a coworker suggests a different approach to a project, and your first instinct is to explain why your way is better. Instead, what if you took a moment to genuinely consider their idea? You might discover a better solution or, at the very least, strengthen your working relationship. The Stoics believed that every interaction is an opportunity to practice wisdom, and humility is a key part of that practice. So, where are you clinging to the need to be right? Is it in your relationships, your work, or even within yourself? Take a step back and reflect on how this attachment might be limiting your growth or causing unnecessary tension. By embracing the Stoic idea of prioritizing understanding over being right, you not only reduce conflict but also cultivate a deeper sense of peace and connection with those around you. It's a small shift in mindset, but one that can transform how you engage with the world. At the heart of Stoic philosophy lies a profound truth. Detachment is not about losing something, but about gaining freedom. It's about understanding what we can control, what we cannot, and finding peace in that clarity. The principles of Stoic detachment, focusing on what's within our power, accepting what isn't, and staying fully present in the moment, are tools to help us navigate life's chaos with calm and purpose. Letting go isn't about giving up, it's about releasing the weight of what we can't change so we can move forward unburdened. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. These words remind us that our greatest power lies in how we choose to respond to the world around us. When we stop trying to control the uncontrollable, we open ourselves to a deeper sense of peace and resilience. It's in this space of acceptance that we find true freedom, a freedom that comes not from external circumstances but from within. So, how can you start applying these principles in your own life? Begin by asking yourself, what am I holding onto that's beyond my control? What would it feel like to let go of that burden, even just a little? Whether it's a worry, a grudge, or an expectation, practicing Stoic detachment can help you reclaim your energy and focus it on what truly matters. Before we wrap up, I'd love to hear your thoughts. How do you practice letting go in your daily life? Share your experiences or questions in the comments below. I read everyone. And if this video resonated with you, consider subscribing for more insights on living a more intentional, peaceful life. Together, let's embrace the art of letting go and discover the freedom it brings. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.